The evacuation began 72 hours after Jake Morrison's broadcast, and the galaxy felt it immediately. Human ships appeared in systems where the Council had never authorized them to operate, using faster-than-light technology that moved them across vast distances in hours instead of weeks. The vessels were sleek and efficient, clearly designed by engineers who understood principles that the Council had never encountered. Captain Sarah Lewis commanded the evacuation fleet from the Bridge of the Freedom, a ship that was 3 times larger than anything in the Council's records of human capabilities. Her screen showed the locations of every human citizen in Council space, from the diplomatic staff on the Central Worlds to the research teams working on remote frontier planets. The evacuation was not just about humans, though. Thousands of aliens had chosen to leave with them, beings who had worked closely with human teams and had seen firsthand what humanity was capable of achieving. Valdorian engineers who had learned that human construction methods were not primitive, but revolutionary. Korthak scientists who had discovered that human research techniques produced results that their traditional approaches could never match. On the Zephyrian homeworld, Dr. Marcus Grant supervised the shutdown of the medical facilities that had been quietly providing advanced treatments to millions of patients. The Zephyrians had never known that the techniques keeping their people healthy were based on human research, had never understood that their own doctors were following protocols developed in laboratories they had dismissed as inadequate. The TU cellular regeneration chambers will function for another 6 months, he explained to his Zephyrian counterpart, a being whose lifespan had been extended by 20 years, thanks to human medical advances. After that, you will need to develop your own maintenance procedures. The Zephyrian doctor's bioluminescent patterns flickered with distress. We do not understand the underlying principles, he admitted. Our training focused on operation, not innovation. Marcus nodded sympathetically. That was the Council's choice, he replied. They preferred to have you follow procedures rather than understand the science behind them. On the Korthak manufacturing worlds, human engineering teams were completing their final inspections of production facilities that had been secretly redesigned over the past 15 years. The massive alien workers who operated the factories had no idea that their increased productivity was due to human innovations, had never been told that their supposedly superior building techniques had been quietly replaced with more efficient human methods. Engineer Carol Davis watched as her team packed up equipment that the Korthak had never seen before, devices that monitored and optimized every aspect of industrial production. The automated systems will keep running for a while, she told the Korthak supervisor who had worked with her for 8 years. But when something breaks, you will need to figure out how to fix it yourselves. The massive alien's rocky features showed confusion and concern. We do not have the technical knowledge to maintain these systems, he said. Can you not leave some humans behind to help us? Carol shook her head. We offered to teach you these techniques many times over the years. Your government said human methods were too primitive to be worth learning. The Council tried desperately to stop the evacuation, sending diplomatic missions to every human facility and offering concessions that would have been unthinkable just days before. Full membership, expanded territory rights, technology sharing agreements, even representation on the Council's governing board. Ambassador Jenny Martinez met them at the edge of human space, her ship positioned at the boundary that separated the hidden human colonies from Council territory. Her message was delivered with professional courtesy, but absolute finality. The Terran Federation is willing to establish normal diplomatic relations with any galactic government that recognizes our sovereignty and treats us as equals, she announced. We are no longer interested in being junior members of anyone's organization. The Council delegations returned to their governments with news that shook the foundations of galactic politics. Humanity had not walked away with 12 primitive colonies as they had assumed. They had left with nearly 1,000 advanced worlds, connected by communication networks that operated faster than anything the Council possessed, defended by military forces whose capabilities were completely unknown. The economic impact was immediate and devastating. Trade routes that had functioned smoothly for decades collapsed as human cargo vessels disappeared from space lanes throughout the galaxy. Manufacturing centers ground to a halt, when human technicians failed to report for maintenance duties they had been performing in secret for years. Food shortages appeared on worlds that had grown dependent on human agricultural techniques without realizing it. The Rigelian colonies faced starvation when their crop yields dropped by 60% in the first harvest after human advisors departed. Medical crises spread across dozens of species as hospitals lost access to treatments that had become standard care over the past decade. The Altarian government was the first to formally request diplomatic relations with the Terran Federation, their representative arriving at the border with a message of apology and a proposal for economic cooperation. They were followed by the Centauri delegation, then the Vegan representatives, then a steady stream of species who had voted to restrict human rights just days before, but now found themselves desperate for human assistance. Captain Nick Turner revealed the locations of human colonies one by one, each announcement accompanied by a declaration of independence and an offer of membership in the newly formed Terran Federation. Worlds that had been developing in secret for decades suddenly appeared on galactic star charts, their populations and resources adding to humanity's growing influence. The hidden colonies were not primitive outposts, but thriving civilizations, with advanced technology and diverse populations. Humans had been sharing their worlds with alien refugees, political dissidents, and anyone else who sought freedom from the restrictive policies of their home governments. The Federation was not just a human organization, but a coalition of species who believed in cooperation rather than domination. Dr. Lisa Parker established the first Federation Medical Center on the border world of New Geneva, offering treatments to anyone who needed them regardless of their species or political affiliation. Aliens who had been denied access to human medical research for 30 years found themselves receiving care that was decades ahead of anything available in Council space. "We never wanted to control galactic medicine," she explained to a group of Council doctors who had traveled across the galaxy to learn techniques they had dismissed as primitive. "We just wanted to help people get better." The Federation's military capabilities remained largely hidden, but occasional glimpses suggested power that far exceeded anything the Council had imagined. Human patrol ships that appeared and disappeared without warning, defensive systems that could detect threats across impossible distances, and communication networks that allowed instant coordination across the entire Federation. General Ben Hayes established the Federation Defense Force headquarters on New Geneva, accepting applications from military officers throughout the galaxy who were tired of serving governments that valued politics over protection. The response was overwhelming, with entire units from dozens of species requesting transfer to Federation service. The Valdorian war chief, General Zara Ka, publicly announced that her people had been fools to underestimate the tactical brilliance of human military doctrine. She requested formal alliance negotiations with the Federation, offering to share Valdorian strategic knowledge in exchange for access to human defensive technologies. 6 months after the evacuation began, the galaxy had been fundamentally transformed. The Council faced the first economic depression in their recorded history, with member governments struggling to maintain basic services without human support. Several species had formally withdrawn from the organization, choosing to seek membership in the Terran Federation instead. The Council president made one final attempt to restore the old relationship, broadcasting a message to Federation space that offered humanity everything they had requested over the past 30 years. Full membership, expanded rights, technology sharing, economic partnerships, military cooperation, and formal recognition as equals in galactic society. Jake Morrison, now serving as the first president of the Terran Federation, responded from the steps of New Geneva's Capitol building. Behind him stood representatives from 47 different species who had chosen to join the Federation, a diverse coalition united by shared principles rather than species loyalty. "The offer you make today is the same offer we would have accepted gladly 30 years ago," he said, his words broadcast across the galaxy. "Unfortunately, you have taught us that we do not need your permission to build the kind of galactic community we want to be part of." The camera panned across the Federation capital, showing humans and aliens working together on projects that would have been impossible under Council regulations. research facilities where different species shared knowledge freely, manufacturing, centers that combined the best techniques from dozens of civilizations. The human diplomatic quarters were hidden deep inside the council station, 3 levels below the main embassy floors where the aliens expected to find them. Jake Morrison led his team through corridors that most people did not know existed, past security systems that registered them as maintenance workers checking environmental controls. The council had spent 30 years watching humanity, but they had never learned to see what humans did not want them to see. Lisa Parker was the first to reach the secure room, her fingers dancing over a control panel that looked like standard council technology but responded to genetic markers that no alien possessed. The lights came on to reveal a space that was much larger than it should have been, carved out of the station's superstructure during construction by human engineers who had been working on the project from the beginning. Ben Hayes sealed the door behind them and activated jamming devices that would make their conversation invisible to any monitoring systems the council might be using. The technology was based on principles that humans had developed 20 years ago, but they had never shared the research with anyone else. The council still believed that human electronics were primitive and easy to intercept. "Show them," Jake said quietly, and Kate Sullivan began activating display screens around the room. The first image that appeared showed the galactic economy in ways that the council had never seen it presented. Lines of trade and commerce flowed between star systems, like rivers of light, and the pattern that emerged made it clear where the real power lay. Human worlds were not the isolated colonies the council believed them to be, but central hubs that connected dozens of other civilizations. "We produce 34% of all manufactured goods in this galaxy," Kate said, her voice steady and professional. "The council thinks that percentage is 8% because they only count the factories they know about. We have been building industrial capacity in secret for 15 years. Lisa pulled up her own files, medical research, that the council had classified as preliminary and unimportant. The data told a different story, showing how human biological research had led to treatments that were now standard care for 6 different species. The Zephyrians live 20% longer now because of work we did on cellular regeneration," she said. "They think their own scientists developed the techniques." Ben's contribution was the most carefully guarded secret of all, military intelligence that showed human tactical capabilities far beyond what the council suspected. "We have been observing and analyzing every military exercise, every war game, every strategic discussion for 3 decades, he said. "We know how every species in the council fights, how they think, how they make decisions under pressure. They know nothing about how we fight." Captain Nick Turner had been quiet during the journey to the secure room, but now he stepped forward to reveal information that made even Jake pause in surprise. Nick commanded the human deep space exploration fleet, the ships that the council allowed to operate in carefully designated areas with limited range and capabilities. "We have colonies in 847 star systems," Nick said simply, and the room fell silent. "The council knows about 12 of them. The rest have been established and developed without their knowledge or permission. We have been exploring and settling new worlds for 25 years. The display screens filled with star charts, showing the true extent of human expansion. Red dots marked the official colonies that the council monitored and controlled. Blue dots showed the hidden settlements that had grown into thriving worlds while the galactic government remained unaware of their existence. The blue dots outnumbered the red ones by more than 70 to 1. "How is that possible?" Jake asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. "We developed our own faster-than-light travel 15 years ago," Nick replied. "It is based on completely different principles than council technology. Our ships can cross the galaxy in days instead of months, and the energy signature is too faint for their sensors to detect." Dr. Ryan Clark had been Jake's science advisor for 10 years, and he had access to research data from every human facility in the galaxy. His report was the most comprehensive of all, showing how human innovation had spread through galactic society like seeds on the wind. "Our agricultural techniques have increased food production on 200 council worlds," he said, displaying images of alien farms that looked nothing like they had before human consultation. "Our manufacturing processes have improved efficiency in industries across 47 different species. Our medical research has saved millions of lives in the past decade alone. And they take credit for all of it, Lisa added with the first hint of anger Jake had seen from her all day. Kate brought up financial records that painted the clearest picture of human influence in the galaxy. Numbers that showed loans, investments, and economic support flowing from human banks to governments throughout council space. 23 different species owe us money, she said. Not small amounts. We are talking about the kind of debt that could crash their economies if we called it in all at once. Jake studied the data, feeling pieces of a plan forming in his mind. 30 years of being treated like children had given humanity something the council had never expected. It had given them motivation to become better than their teachers, smarter than their supervisors, more capable than anyone suspected. The question is what we do with this information, he said, looking around the room at people who had spent their careers serving a galactic government that did not respect them or value their contributions. Ben was the first to answer. We could expose everything at once, show them exactly how much they depend on us and demand better treatment. Or we could use it as leverage, Kate suggested. Make them understand that partnership works better than control. Lisa shook her head. They have had 30 years to figure out that partnership works better than control. They chose not to learn that lesson. Jake walked over to a display that showed the vote tallies from every council session where humanity had requested expanded rights or reduced restrictions. The pattern was always the same. A few species would support human proposals, but the vast majority would vote to maintain the status quo, to keep humans in their carefully controlled box. There is a third option, he said slowly, the plan becoming clearer in his mind. We stop asking for permission. Nick smiled for the first time since they had entered the room. You mean we leave? I mean we stop pretending that we need them more than they need us, Jake replied. 30 years ago, humanity joined the council because we wanted to be part of something bigger than ourselves. We wanted to contribute to galactic civilization and learn from species that had been traveling the stars for thousands of years. He paused, looking at each member of his team in turn. What we learned is that galactic civilization was not as advanced as we thought it was. What we discovered is that we had contributions to make that they were not interested in receiving. What we found out is that they do not want partners. They want students who never graduate. The room was quiet for a long moment as everyone considered what Jake was suggesting. Walking away from the council would mean giving up the security of being part of the largest political organization in the galaxy. It would mean taking responsibility for their own defense, their own trade relationships, their own future. It would also mean freedom. When do we tell them? Lisa asked. Jake looked at the chronometer on the wall and calculated how long it would take to recall every human citizen from council space, to prepare the hidden colonies for independence, to organize the kind of exodus that would shake the foundations of galactic politics. Tomorrow, he said. We tell them tomorrow. Jake Morrison walked back into the council chamber the next morning with every human representative, scientist, military officer, and trade delegate in the station following behind him. The aliens barely looked up from their conversations, expecting another plea for reconsideration or perhaps a formal acceptance of the council's decision. They had seen this pattern before with other species who had been denied full membership rights. What they did not expect was for Jake to walk directly to the center of the speaking floor and activate a communication system that should not have existed according to their records of human technological capabilities. The holographic displays around the chamber flickered and changed, showing a signal strength that reached every inhabited world in the galaxy. Emergency communication protocols activated on planets thousands of light years away as the broadcast began transmitting on frequencies that the Council had never authorized humans to use. Citizens of the galaxy, Jake began, his voice calm and clear as it was simultaneously translated into every known language and transmitted to every world with the technology to receive it. For 30 years, humanity has sought membership in this council, believing that cooperation and mutual respect would benefit all species. The council chamber erupted in confusion as representatives realized that humans had not only bypassed their communication controls, but had done so with technology that was far more advanced than anything in their intelligence files. The Zephyrian delegate was pulsing rapid colors that indicated extreme agitation, while the Korthak representative was frantically trying to trace the signal to its source. "Today we have learned otherwise," Jake continued, ignoring the chaos around him. "We have discovered that this council does not seek partners but servants, not contributors but students who are never allowed to graduate." Lisa Parker stepped forward, her medical files appearing on displays throughout the chamber and across the galaxy. Research data that the council had dismissed as primitive was revealed in its true context, showing breakthrough treatments that had extended lives and cured diseases across dozens of species. "All human medical research will be discontinued for council species immediately," she announced. "This includes the cellular regeneration project that has extended Zephyrian lifespans by 20%, the cross-species immunity enhancement program that has prevented plague outbreaks on 47 worlds, and the neural pathway restoration techniques that have cured paralysis in 6 different species." The medical implications hit the chamber like a physical blow. Hospitals across the galaxy would lose access to treatments they had come to depend on, research programs would collapse without human expertise, and millions of beings would face diseases that they had thought were conquered forever. Captain Nick Turner was next, his star charts replacing the medical data on the displays. The hidden extent of human expansion appeared for the first time, blue dots representing colonies that had grown and thrived, while the council remained completely unaware of their existence. "All human cargo vessels are hereby recalled to human space," he declared. "Shipments currently in transit will be completed to honor existing contracts, but no new agreements will be accepted from council worlds. This includes the transport of medical supplies, manufactured goods, and food products that currently supply 34% of galactic commerce." Trade representatives throughout the chamber were rapidly calculating what this would mean. For their worlds, supply chains that had operated smoothly for decades would collapse overnight, critical resources would disappear from markets, and the economic disruption would affect every civilization in council space. Kate Sullivan took her place at the center of the floor, financial data streaming across every screen in the chamber and across the galaxy. Loan records, investment portfolios, and economic support agreements that had been hidden behind layers of intermediary companies were revealed for the first time. "The Human Development Bank is calling in all outstanding loans to council governments," she announced with professional precision. "Total debt amounts to 2.7 trillion galactic credits across 23 species. Full repayment is expected within the standard galactic fiscal quarter." The economic implications were staggering. Several council governments would face immediate bankruptcy. Others would be forced to implement severe austerity measures that would cause massive social disruption. The carefully maintained stability of the galactic economy would shatter like glass. Ben Hayes stepped forward last, his military intelligence files appearing on screens that had been designed to display only council-approved information. Strategic assessments, tactical analyses, and defensive capabilities that painted a picture of human military potential that was completely different from the Council's assumptions. "Human security forces will withdraw from all Council installations and joint operations," he said, his words causing immediate alarm among representatives whose worlds depended on human peacekeeping assistance. This includes border patrol duties, piracy suppression, and defensive support agreements that currently protect 41 different star systems. The chamber fell silent as the full scope of the announcement became clear. Humanity was not just leaving the Council, they were taking with them the foundation that had made galactic civilization possible. Medical advances, economic stability, trade networks, and military security would all disappear at once. The Valdorian war chief was the first to break the silence, her 6 arms gesturing frantically as she tried to process what she was hearing. "This is impossible," she declared. "Human capabilities are limited. Their influence is minimal, their technology is primitive." Jake smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. "That is what you chose to believe," he replied. "The evidence to the contrary has been available to you for 30 years. You simply never bothered to look for it." Dr. Ryan Clark activated one final display, showing research facilities, manufacturing centers, and development projects that existed on every human world. The scope of innovation and productivity was breathtaking, revealing a civilization that had been quietly advancing while pretending to accept council guidance. "You spent 3 decades telling us we were not ready for advanced technology," HFY said, his voice carrying to every world in the galaxy. "You never asked if we had already developed our own." The council president, an ancient being from a species that had helped found the galactic government thousands of years ago, rose slowly from his ceremonial platform. His voice carried the authority of millennia when he spoke. "The council cannot function without human participation," he admitted, the words causing shocked silence throughout the chamber. "The economic disruption alone would cause the collapse of dozens of governments. We are prepared to reconsider humanity's status and grant full membership immediately." Jake shook his head, his expression sad but resolute. "30 years too late," he replied. "You had 3 decades to treat us as equals, to value our contributions, to respect our capabilities. Instead, you chose to see us as children who needed constant supervision." He looked around the chamber one last time, taking in the faces of beings who had spent years dismissing human potential and were now faced with the consequences of their blindness. Effective immediately, humanity formally withdraws from the Galactic Council and all associated treaties, he announced. "We will honor existing contracts with individual species who wish to continue trade relations, but we will no longer submit to the authority of an organization that views us as servants rather than partners." The human delegation turned and walked toward the exit, their footsteps echoing in the stunned silence of the chamber. Behind them, the galaxy began to understand that the species they had underestimated for 30 years had been offering them partnership all along. Now they would discover what they had lost by refusing it. Jake Morrison stood in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council and felt the weight of 30 years pressing down on his shoulders. The massive chamber stretched out before him like a theater built for gods, with thousands of seats arranged in perfect circles around the speaking floor. Every seat was filled with an alien being, and every one of those beings was talking about humans like they were children who had wandered into an adult conversation by mistake. The Zephyrian delegate floated above his platform, his jellyfish-like body pulsing with different colors as he spoke. His voice came through the translation device as cold and clinical. "The human species continues to display concerning levels of emotional instability," he said, and Jake could hear the rustling of agreement from dozens of other species. "Their tendency toward violence remains unchanged despite our guidance over the past 3 decades. Lisa Parker sat in the human section behind Jake, her hands folded neatly in her lap, but he could see the tension in her shoulders. She was the smartest person Jake had ever met, a doctor who had spent her whole life studying alien biology and trying to find ways for humans and other species to work together. For 20 years, she had watched the council dismiss her research as primitive and outdated, even when her work saved lives across the galaxy. Colonel Ben Hayes sat 2 seats away from Lisa, his military uniform pressed and perfect, his face showing nothing of what Jake knew he was thinking. Ben had fought in the border wars before humanity joined the council, and he had seen what humans could do when they were fighting for their lives. The council had never seen that side of humanity, and Ben made sure they never would. The council preferred to think of humans as violent but weak, dangerous but easily controlled. The Korthak representative was speaking now, his massive form making the platform creak under his weight. The Korthak looked like bears crossed with lizards, and they were known throughout the galaxy as master builders and engineers. "Human construction methods remain crude and inefficient," the alien said, his words causing more murmurs of agreement. "We have offered to teach them proper techniques many times, but they continue to use their primitive methods." Jake almost smiled at that. The Korthak had no idea that human engineering teams had quietly redesigned the support systems for half the buildings on their homeworld. The structures the Korthak thought were built with their superior methods were actually held up by human innovations that they had never bothered to examine closely. The Valdorian war chief stood next, her 6 arms moving in the gestures that meant formal address among her people. The Valdorians were warriors, respected throughout the galaxy for their tactical knowledge and their ability to end conflicts quickly and efficiently. Human military doctrine lacks sophistication, she declared, her translated voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered 12 star systems. Their strategies are predictable and based on outdated thinking. Ben shifted slightly in his seat, and Jake knew what that meant. Ben had access to intelligence reports that would shock the Valdorians, data that showed human military tacticians had successfully predicted and countered Valdorian strategies in 17 different wargames. The Council had run those simulations to test their own defensive capabilities, never realizing that the human observers were learning more than they were teaching. The debate went on for hours, with species after species standing up to explain why humanity was not ready for full membership in the Council, why they needed more guidance, more restrictions, more oversight. The Altarians complained that human art was too emotional and disturbing. The Centauri delegation said human philosophy was too focused on individual rights instead of collective good. The vegan representatives argued that human food production methods were inefficient and environmentally destructive. Jake listened to it all and kept his face calm and professional. He had heard these same arguments for 30 years, had watched as the Council voted again and again to keep humanity in a probationary status that was supposed to be temporary. They gave humans just enough access to galactic society to keep them interested, just enough technology to keep them hopeful, but never enough respect to make them equal partners. The worst part was that Jake knew many of the aliens in this chamber were good people who genuinely believed they were helping humanity grow and develop. They had convinced themselves that their constant criticism and control was a form of kindness, like parents guiding a difficult child. They could not see that. Their child had grown up without them noticing. Dr. Kate Sullivan leaned forward in her seat as the economic discussion began. Kate understood money better than anyone Jake had ever met, and she had spent 15 years quietly building financial relationships throughout the galaxy. The Council thought they were teaching humans about interstellar commerce, but Kate had been learning their systems and finding ways to make them work better. The Rigelian trade minister was speaking now about human economic development. The human colonies show some promise, he admitted, but their production methods are still far behind galactic standards. We estimate it will take at least another 50 years before they can contribute meaningfully to galactic commerce. Jake saw Kate's lips twitch in what might have been a smile. The Rigelians had no idea that human factories were already producing goods for half the species in the Council, sold through intermediary companies that hid their true origin. Human, agricultural, techniques had increased food production on dozens of worlds, and human medical research had extended lifespans across the galaxy. The Council just never bothered to trace where these improvements were really coming from. The final vote was about to begin. The decision on whether to grant humanity 3 new colony worlds that they had been requesting for 5 years. Jake knew what the result would be before the first delegate raised their voting device. He had seen this show too many times before. The vote was 847 to 1, with only humanity supporting the proposal. Jake stood up slowly and looked around the chamber at thousands of aliens who thought they knew what humans were capable of. He thought about the hidden colonies that the Council had never discovered, the technologies they had developed in secret, the relationships they had built without asking permission. The human delegation requests a recess to consider the Council's decision, Jake said in a clear, calm voice that carried across the silent chamber. He turned and walked toward the exit, followed by every human in the building. It was time to show the galaxy what they had really learned in 30 years of being underestimated. 2 years had passed since humanity walked away from the Galactic Council, and the galaxy had learned to live with the consequences of 30 years of short-sighted leadership. The Federation had grown from humanity's hidden colonies into a thriving alliance of 63 different species, each contributing their unique strengths to a community built on mutual respect rather than hierarchical control. Jake Morrison stood in his office overlooking the Federation capital on New Geneva, reading reports from across their territory. Agricultural production was up 18% from the previous year, with new farming techniques developed through collaboration between human engineers and vegan botanists. Medical research had achieved breakthrough treatments for diseases that had plagued the galaxy for centuries. with scientists from dozens of species working together in ways the Council had never allowed. The communication device on his desk chimed, softly indicating an incoming message from Captain Sarah Lewis, who now commanded the Federation's deep space exploration fleet. Her ships had discovered 47 new worlds suitable for colonization in the past year alone, using scanning technology that combined human innovation with Altarian sensor arrays and Centauri navigation systems. "We have established first contact with 3 new species this month," she reported, her image appearing on the holographic display. "All 3 have expressed interest in Federation membership after learning about our principles of equality and cooperation." Jake smiled at the news, remembering how the Council had insisted that humanity was too primitive to be trusted with first contact protocols. Federation explorers had successfully initiated peaceful relationships with 18 different civilizations, while the Council's own expansion had stalled completely due to their economic difficulties. Dr. Lisa Parker entered the office carrying a medical report that would have been impossible under the old system. Her research teams now included doctors and scientists from 40 different species, each bringing their unique biological knowledge to projects that benefited everyone. Life expectancy had increased across all Federation worlds, while disease outbreaks that had once threatened entire civilizations were now contained within days of discovery. "The Zephyrian Longevity Project has exceeded all expectations," she announced, her excitement barely contained. "We have extended their natural lifespan by 30%, and the techniques are showing similar promise for 12 other species." The success was even more meaningful because it had been achieved through genuine collaboration, rather than the Council's preferred method of having one species develop technology and then sharing it with carefully selected allies. Federation research belonged to everyone who contributed to it, and the results were available to all member species regardless of their political influence or economic power. Colonel Ben Hayes arrived next, carrying intelligence reports that painted a stark picture of conditions in Council space. Military conflicts had increased by 400% since the Federation's departure, with member species fighting over resources and territory that had once been peacefully managed through human mediation. The Council's own peacekeeping forces were stretched beyond their limits, unable to maintain stability without human tactical support. 7 more species have formally requested Federation protection, he reported, displaying star charts that showed the requests coming from worlds throughout Council territory. "The Korthak government has offered to share their entire industrial database in exchange for defensive assistance." Jake studied the requests carefully, weighing the Federation's obligation to help against the practical limitations of their expanding responsibilities. The Federation military was powerful but not infinite, and every new commitment meant resources that could not be used elsewhere. The irony was not lost on him that species who had once dismissed human capabilities were now begging for the protection that humans had once provided freely as Council members. The same tactical innovations that the Valdorians had called crude and predictable were now being credited with preventing 3 different wars and resolving conflicts that Council mediators had failed to address for decades. Ambassador Jenny Martinez contacted them from the Federation border, where she spent her days meeting with delegations from Council worlds, seeking economic agreements, medical assistance, and military cooperation. The Council's original restrictions on human expansion now seemed absurdly naive, as Federation territory had grown to encompass more star systems than any other political entity in galactic history. "The Rigelian Trade Minister is here again," she reported with amusement in her voice. "This is his 7th visit in 3 months, and his offers keep getting more desperate. They are now willing to grant us exclusive mining rights to their entire home system in exchange for food shipments." The agricultural crisis in Council space had worsened as worlds that had grown dependent on human farming techniques struggled to maintain their food supplies. Federation agricultural advisors were working with dozens of species to address the shortages, but the assistance came with conditions that the Council had never imposed on humanity. Species seeking Federation help had to demonstrate genuine commitment to equality and cooperation, not just economic desperation. They had to prove that they understood the difference between partnership and charity, that they were prepared to contribute to the relationship rather than simply benefit from it. Dr. Kate Sullivan had transformed the Federation's economic system into something the galaxy had never seen before. Instead of the hierarchical trade relationships that characterized Council commerce, the Federation operated on principles of mutual benefit and shared prosperity. Weaker members received support to develop their capabilities, while stronger members gained access to resources and markets that enhanced their own growth. Our economic growth rate is maintaining at 32% annually, she reported during their weekly planning session. More importantly, the benefits are being distributed evenly across all member species. No one is being left behind, and no one is being exploited. The contrast with Council economics was stark. While Federation worlds prospered through cooperation, Council space struggled with inequality, resource conflicts, and the kind of zero-sum thinking that had kept humanity in a subordinate position for 30 years. Captain Nick Turner had revealed the final secret of human expansion, the network of automated manufacturing stations that had been built throughout the galaxy during humanity's time in the Council. Hidden facilities that had been producing goods, conducting research and gathering information, while appearing to be nothing more than asteroid mining operations or deep space communication relays. We have 1,247 operational facilities in previously unexplored regions, he announced, displaying a map that showed the true scope of human preparation for independence. Each one is capable of supporting a colony fleet or serving as a forward base for exploration and development. The revelation explained how humanity had been able to establish hundreds of hidden colonies without Council detection. It also demonstrated a level of long-term planning that had allowed them to walk away from the Council with minimal disruption to their own population, while maximizing the impact on the galactic economy. The Council had finally begun to understand the magnitude of their mistake, but understanding came too late to reverse the consequences. Several member species had already withdrawn from the organization to seek Federation membership, while others teetered on the edge of economic collapse without human support. The Council president made one final appeal, a personal message to Jake Morrison that was broadcast across both Council and Federation space. The ancient being who had helped found the galactic government thousands of years ago admitted what everyone already knew. "We were wrong," he said simply, his words carrying the weight of millennia of experience. "We allowed fear and pride to blind us to humanity's true potential, and we treated partners as subordinates when we should have celebrated them as equals." Jake received the message in his office on New Geneva, surrounded by advisors from dozens of different species who had found in the Federation the kind of galactic community they had always dreamed of building. His response was measured and thoughtful, acknowledging the Council's admission while making clear that apologies could not undo the damage of 30 years of institutional prejudice. "The Federation welcomes any species that shares our commitment to equality, cooperation, and mutual respect," he replied. "Individual Council members are free to apply for Federation membership, but we cannot restore the relationship that might have existed if the Council had chosen a different path 3 decades ago." The galaxy had been transformed by humanity's decision to walk away from an organization that did not value their contributions, but the transformation went far deeper than political boundaries or economic systems. The Federation had proven that cooperation could produce results that competition never achieved. That diversity of thought and approach led to innovations that no single species could develop alone. As Jake looked out over New Geneva's skyline, watching humans and aliens work together on projects that pushed the boundaries of what galactic civilization could accomplish, he reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point.